Excellent. So welcome everybody. This is SharePoint Dev Weekly, episode 17. I will need to start always reading it from here because I can't remember. So this time it is 10th of December. I was just talking about the fact that that was the US way of defining dates, which by the way is completely different than in Europe. So I always need to figure out which one is the month and a date. But because we have a US-based visitor today, we wanted to do that properly. So Julie, will you do the intros?
Sure. My name is Julie Turner. I am a partner with Sympraxis Consulting. We're in the Boston area of the United States. It's myself, Mark Anderson, and Todd Clint at the moment. So a fun little group of 3 MVPs doing consulting. So
how does that work together? I know you guys all personally, so it's like the triangle thingy. Is it working fine?
It works wonderfully. It works wonderfully. I like to say, Mark will correct me because this is not proper English, but I consider ourselves like Venn diagrams of each other. So we overlap, but we each have kind of our own specialties. So it works out really good, actually, because we're able to cover a lot more area that way.
Yep.
So, but I thought that Todd was more the admin guy, right? So how does he overlap?
Well, because he does some scripting and stuff like that. So like PowerShell scripting.
PowerShell scripting.
Yes.
So, I can do PowerShell. Mark can do a little PowerShell.
Mark can do some other things.
Mark does a lot of good things. So
I know.
Tease.
Yeah.
Although I tease him regularly, but yeah.
Well, he did do SPs. He did do SP services a while back, way before the time, explaining how to do remote API calls from JavaScript and all of that. So,
he's a really good client-side dev and does a lot of great work there, and has taken on the mantle of SharePoint Framework. So he's doing some more of that. And then he's got he understands that business, how to do IA type of design and stuff like that at a level that, I can do it, but it's not my forte compared to like wanting to do APIs and full stack dev and SharePoint Framework and that kind of thing, which is more my focus. So
yeah. Cool. Before we actually go to what we've done for the past week, just wanted to get your opinions on this one. I just created this earlier today. Is that a beautiful new logo for PMP as well, potentially? Who knows? Somebody's going to bite me for that one, by the way.
Teal is my favorite color. So unlike others, I'm not as upset about the teal choice, but I like it. I think it's good. Well, Waldek's like, no, not so much.
No, I'm just trying to say, like we need everything new. Stickers, socks, t-shirts, like everything rebrand. But hey.
That sounds fun.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah,
I like change. As long as it does not affect me.
Okay. Because that's how the world works.
Everything circles around Waldek, right? You were the number one influencer, right?
There you go, right? Yes.
I am just a measly moon.
Yes. That's how it works.
Over Pluto, which isn't a planet.
But I have to say, so I knew when this was obviously coming, and I got a warn-up from my manager. It's actually kind of funny. We were in the European SharePoint conference, and my manager told us, week before already, that, by the way, at the time of European SharePoint conference, we're going to do an announcement of the logos. We do apologize for all of the hassle that will cause. And it's like, well, it's a logo. It didn't cause any hassle. It wasn't really like, sure, there's opinions, but...
We're not marketing. We're not.
But that's true. Yes, we're devs. Except Waldek, right? So
yeah.
Oh yeah, right. He's not anymore. No.
No.
Oh yeah.
Oh. And yet here I am presenting the SP Dev Weekly, right?
There we go.
Touche, my friend. Touche.
Well, to be fair, I'm a PM, so I'm not allowed to code anymore. So I'm just doing slides.
There you go. So there's not 2 not devs presenting a weekly dev show.
There we go. We should probably stop Waldek and give this whole show to Julie, right?
There we go. No.
We can call it the SPPM Weekly or
SPPM Weekly. That's fine.
Okay. Non-developers thing of developers doing stuff.
Hey, Waldek, you're getting off the script. Get back to the script. So
the script, yes.
Let's be professional.
Exactly.
It is here somewhere. It is.
You have a script? Good.
Yes.
Yes. I don't know.
It's written on the back of this
Wrap
Candy paper, yeah.
Finnish candies. Cool.
Yes, of course.
Anyway, so let's go around of what we've been doing for lately related on SharePoint Dev, and then have a discussion on a few topics, because there's some cool stuff to talk about again, and then we'll get back on the full screen. But Waldek, let's start from you now. What's your weekly story? Have you been able?
What?
Have you been able to do any dev? Obviously, on the CLI side.
Stop crying. Yeah, so being non-dev, I worked a bit on the CLI. We had new beta, and then another thing that I've done is I've done some more work, and we're almost done with a cross-platform Bash-based provisioning script for the SharePoint starter kit.
Oh, cool.
I can tell you it's a hell.
Obviously, I have to ask the obvious question, because somebody would be thinking this. Why?
Because I am on a Mac. Like today, day of the recording, you cannot provision the SharePoint starter kit unless you are on Windows.
Yeah.
So this is exactly why. So I'm still waiting to be able to provision it, since it was released like a few months back.
May, end of May.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Just a few.
Well, yes. I mean, it takes time, and like you'll be surprised. Like first of all, Bash. I've never programmed a script in Bash, so all the things like how do you do logics and the for each loop and ifs, it's different than what you would do in JavaScript, in C#, even PowerShell.
Yeah.
And then quotes. Oh my God! Don't get me started on quotes in Bash. Like trying to escape a JSON string in Bash.
Wow. Yeah.
It's like you have to have like single quote with a backtick, and then escaping like double quotes. Like,
it's amazing how complicated things that seem so simple can make your whole project. It's like the project's not hard. It's escaping strings or making some concatenation work right, or whatever it is. Those
it's a simple things, right? And it's like, I just want this string to fit that. No. It's like, Anyway, so we're almost. I think the only thing we have left is the ability to provision text on pages. Other than that, we have everything. So
the just to explain also, the starter kit is adding content and web parts on the modern pages and all of that. So it's a ready to use a portal. We'll absolutely get a link to the video notes as well. But having then, and no doubt, the modern pages and having content inside of the modern pages is one of the most complicated things what is available right now in SharePoint. Luckily for Windows people and for CSUM, we actually, Bert Janssen, for the one guy, well, my really good friend from the BMP crew as well, wrote a nice CSUM wrapper on the modern pages. And now in engineering, we're looking into that wrapper, and hopefully we'll do something similar in the Graph APIs for the modern pages at some point. But,
well, so actually things aren't really that bad, because on the non-Windows side, there is the PNP.js, which does kind of similar thing. Like if that wasn't there, my life would be hell.
Good point.
So big, huge shout out and thanks to Patrick and the crew for doing that, because without it, like you would be looking at manipulating DOM in Bash. Like, no, you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Cool.
No.
Anything?
No.
Anything else?
No. That already took the biggest portion of my week.
So you're not actually working then. So you had no, never. Waldek actually
Let me take a candy, and I will shut up.
Waldek actually has a day's job as well, on top of all of this stuff what we're doing together. So. And a family, so pretty big things as well. Priorities, obviously. Anyway, Julie, what about you? What have you been doing?
Well, so I spent the end of last week at SharePoint Fest in Chicago, presenting a little bit. I did a presentation on actionable messages and a solution around actionable messages and Azure functions. And I did a talk on the Graph Excel endpoints and how you can use that in various ways. One way to get data out of SharePoint and put it in Excel, which, half the users in the world always want it in Excel. It's like the most required feature, right? Download to Excel or export to Excel. So how to use the graph endpoints to do that. And then also there's something, if anybody's interested, there's something in the graph endpoint for Excel where you can make a persistent session where you're changing things and things change, or you can make a non-persistent session. So part of my talk is around the idea of making a calculation engine, so you don't have to program some complex calculations that accountants do or whatever. So that part of that. And then I did a future-proof talk with Bob German. So that was last week. And other than that, I'm working on a multilingual application customizer. So that's been fun.
On SharePoint Framework, obviously.
On SharePoint Framework, yes.
For a customer or something, or? For
a customer, and, potentially something that will be released out to the community. So we'll hope for that.
Yep.
Cool.
Crossing fingers, crossing fingers. So
crossing fingers and toes.
I might know the customer if I'm not mistaken.
You might.
Fair point. And what was the future proving with Bob German? So that was future proving development, right? So,
right. So we do. We had started this a while ago. It's kind of a theme that he and I work on a lot together. But the idea was around having an application customizer to do global nav, which, at this time, there's not a really good solution for global nav. But the part of the issue there is that you not only want it for modern, you want the same nav in classic, because anytime you're on a classic page, you need that. But also when you're in a modern site, if you're on any of the menus, like if you're on a list configuration page or any of the application or the site pages where you're configuring things, all those pages are classic and you lose your menu. So you need to be able to deploy to both. And one of the things that we wanted to be able to do is say, okay, here's a set of common code that is the same no matter if you're on modern and classic. It's just a different way to bind your customization into the UI, right? So you have the SharePoint Framework application customizer, and if you're in classic, you have the JavaScript injection or custom action. So it's just the little bit of code to bring it into the UX, but then the common code and how you sort of set that up and how you might do it for web parts and everything else. So.
Absolutely makes sense.
Cool.
Because obviously, SharePoint Framework extensions do not work in Classic, and it's theoretically, we could have enabled them to work there, but that was a resourcing decision. Modern web parts, client-side web parts, are used in Classic as well, or can be used in Classic, and they are widely used in Classic by customers. So I can't go to exact details, but that's one of the things, by the way, that I worked on last week. So among the other things on my table, I'm responsible of the SharePoint Dev telemetry and reporting internally in Microsoft, having a dashboard in Power BI where I can see all the time on 24 hours what's happening and where people are using SPFX and how, and if there's any blockers or whatever, we can actually pinpoint them out. So having more insights on how SPFX is being used on Classic versus modern. Is it a web part extension, and what kind of component type? And then we can actually see how the directions are moving and all of that. So that's something what I also need to do. So that's kind of a PM stuff, right? So it is. Write code. So, but that's basically how we justify our obviously existence of, for example, SharePoint PnP and the developer guidance and the community work. What we do, we need to show that there's a demand. We need to show that there's a growing demand on certain things, and driven company. So. Cool. And what else? I was in Thrive conference. I had a keynote in Thrive conference in Ljubljana on Tuesday, and we were planning the European Collaboration Summit, which is in next May, 8th June on Monday, and then I had a session on latest on SharePoint Dev. So quite a few sessions within the last 3-4 weeks. So I'm super happy to be back home and hanging here. So which finally it's done. So. It's always whenever I started flying to Ljubljana on Sunday morning at 6 a.m. Last Sunday, not the week before, now Sunday, and then I'm heading to the airport. Like, why do I say yes? Why do I say yes for these things? Why?
I'm not traveling again till February, and I totally feel what you're saying. I'm like, I left for this one, and I was just like, oh my gosh, okay, here we go.
Exactly.
I'm gonna do it.
They're fun.
It's
they're
Christmas
great to see
baking
friends.
season, people. I got a lot of work to do.
That is true as well. That's true as well. Cool. Let's go to the actual slides.
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 He's got an agenda.
Content.
On the
focus. That's not focus.
Yes.
You need to focus.
Indeed. I am focusing. So let's see if I will get you guys back in that screen. So you can see what I'm sharing, right?
Yes, of course.
Cool. So a few items which I wanted to go through. This is just something which I posted out last Thursday, and apparently people liked this Wednesday, because Thursday was the Independence Day in Finland, and that was off. So Wednesday, and people like this. So this is just to anybody who is trying slides. The whole deck is now available for you as a PPTX file. It has like 75 different drawings and graphics and all kinds of different ways of presenting different kind of data. Now, the reason why I wanted to share this is basically that, well, why wouldn't you want to have access on these images if you are presenting somewhere? And this is going to save time for presenters or internal, external presenters, so you can take these for innovation and ideas, and that's cool looking thing, and I'll just modify that one, and then it's useful for you. So let's rather save everybody's time rather than keeping these by ourselves. And also, just a quick note, do not send me an email asking permissions of using this anywhere you want. So this is, I don't have time for that.
You'll get a 404?
Exactly.
Well, no, you'll get a 429.
Oh, 429, right. Sorry.
What's 429? 429.
Oh, right. 404. You know what I meant.
Yes.
You knew which 4 I meant.
Yeah. So basically, you're free to use the slides any way you want, or graphics any way you want. You don't have to mention anybody who's drawn them. Just have fun. That's basically the whole point. Cool. The next thing what we wanted to go through, this is from end of November. But we haven't gone this through, and this is, even though this is not really deep dive on API, but we're talking about SharePoint. So SharePoint is not just about API, it's about solution designs and functionalities. You need to understand what's out of the box, what's not out of the box, so you don't implement something which is out of the box. So this is from Mark Cashman, who's the marketing manager, one of the marketing managers for, how would I put it, end user driven side of the game. So
experiences?
Experiences. Well, that's one way of putting that. Yeah. And this is kind of a long list of things where we are around the stuff what we announced in Ignite. So as an example, Mega Menu, there's a roadmap ID on that one referenced here, and you can go and have a look on the details where we are with that one. That's coming relatively new, relatively soon is the right way of putting that in English. We also will have a change to look panel changes. So we'll have a theme header, navigation, and footer. So there will be a static footer option available. So you don't have to then have a, let's say, a custom footer there. If it only has static links, you can actually implement that by using an out-of-the-box static footer functionality, and you're able to add links there. Now, if you want to have a personalized links or something advanced, then you'll obviously fall back on the SharePoint framework, and you can always do that. And obviously, somebody might be thinking, footer, is it still the floating footer? And answer is yes, for now. What's a floating footer? Anybody wants to elaborate on that? The problem obviously is that the placeholder or the footer in SharePoint in the modern is kind of all the time in the bottom of the page, right? That's the right way of putting it. Rather in the content, which is something what we're working on. But
it is the bottom of the viewport.
Yes.
It's the visible
Yes.
part of the page. You can always see it.
The footer of the content. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And obviously there's a need for both of them. So we will
say there's an argument for both.
Absolutely, 100% agree on that. So at some point, somebody needed to prioritize: are we going to do the viewport footer first or the content footer first? And then we did a viewport footer first. And since that, there has been a few adjustments again on the resources and prioritization and everything else, and everything is shuffling. That always happens in engineering and Redmond. And then I think right now everybody is again back on, okay, let's make stuff happen properly. So addressing those gaps, which we know. A new slide header footer options. So this is more around the footer options and what's available, the logos and all of that. Create an associated site within the hub site. So basically, if you're in a hub site, there's a create site link, which will then associate that site collection, which is getting created automatically to the hub, and completely understandable functionality. Scrolling down, mentions in page views and comments, understandable. We want to mention people there, and then they will get a notification on it. API or UI way of doing themify functionality. I almost said it. There is an inside joke related on this one.
It's like don't mention it. Don't mention it. Don't mention it.
No, not going to do that.
There is dialogue box to add.
Exactly. There is an inside joke related on themifying stuff. Now, this one is using the graph endpoint, which is actually then a post event against the theme behind of the site, and which will then create behind of the group, site. But there is a documented way of creating theme for the SharePoint site. And you can do that programmatically already today. This is then the UI comparison on that one. Quicker dialog boxes, adding lists and templates on the Microsoft Teams tabs, and new and updated web parts coming. There's quite a lot of new stuff coming, like finally a YouTube video web part or YouTube embed. I think this was mainly delayed because of final approvals from YouTube people as well and the legal stuff. So always delays these things. All of that legal burden, right? Careful, don't say anything. And then a quick chart update. So a quick chart web part is coming, and a few other things are coming as well. So a lot of stuff is coming. This is a great blog post in the tech community listing all of the things which is available. So what's coming in December 2018 and all of that. So page designs will have a new functionality. So this one is from David Warner. David is really releasing a lot of stuff every single week. And this is a great short video. I think it was 7 minutes related on Docker and SharePoint framework and how you would use Office 365 CLI inside of the Docker. So if you're doing SharePoint framework development, Julie, are you using Docker, just out of curiosity?
I am not using Docker. No, okay. I'm using no version manager to do my deal, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. I just haven't crossed over in that to even try it. So
yeah. So basically, the Docker or Node version manager is giving you the different version support, because you are able to then isolate the different versions. So Node version manager is running. It isolates things in a separate way than using a Docker. Docker is actual and, well, how would I put it? More isolated way.
Yeah, even more isolated. A complete container versus sort of
a VM. It is a VM, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So why, just out of curiosity, Waldek, are you using Docker? You're the Docker.
I am not building SPFX stuff anymore, so.
Oh, come on now.
Come
you
on.
have an opinion. Don't act
also, so like for example, like once in a while, or even when we worked on the CLI and we wanted to have the ability to more easily upgrade projects from one version of SPFX to another, I had to go back and create a project using SPFX v1. Yep. That is definitely a thing that I did in Docker, because I had no interest in installing Node v6 with npm3 or something like that, like some old stuff. And then the one thing that I am interested in, like when you talk about, okay, so you use NVM, which is more meant for installing different versions of Node side by side. But what if there are two versions of SPFX that use the same version of Node? What do you do then?
I've got 12.1 and 12.3 or whatever.
Yeah, okay, exactly.
Make it work. I mean, it's so rare to like need that level of detail that I'm not really worried about it. And to your point, if I had to go back, I actually still have 6, right? Node 6 installed. So I don't use it anymore, but I have it. So if I need to go back for that purpose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
it works. I mean,
Yeah. Sure, and I mean that is the thing that you can easily do in Docker, right? Because it frees your like if you don't need it, remove the image and it's gone.
It's one of those things where there's so many different ways to do things, and you hear about them, and then you're like, I want to try that, and then real life gets in the way, and you haven't had a chance. It's kind of like async await promises. I've done async await forever in C#. Do you know how long it took me to actually like, I have a new project and I should try async await? And now I'm like, why haven't I done
TypeScript?
this? Yeah. It's just an example, right? Like it's been out, it's been available, but it didn't get in the.
I mean, all of your code that you've written in the past is on promises, so you don't want to change all of that. You just want to get that over with and then do the thing, right?
Right, exactly. And mostly you're not starting something new. You're supporting things that you've built before, or you're taking something and tweaking it, and so then you're like, well, I'm not going to rewrite the whole thing from scratch. It's just the point is, it's just sometimes it takes a long time to get things in your queue to try them, and Docker is just not one I've embraced yet. And if I ran into something where I needed like 4 of the same versions of Node, then I'd be like, okay, stop. Let's figure out how to do Docker, and we'll do it that way.
Yeah, but I guess that is the difference between R&D and then the real project, right? Because if you have a project, you might be doing one and the same thing for 3 months, half a year. R&D is like every single day something different.
Exactly. And that and to that point, I mean, yes, but to that point, that's why you learn all those kinds of things, because it's R&D. You're supposed to have covered everything, right? Whereas an everyday developer gets sort of focused on what they're working on and may not hear about things or, whatever, right?
Which is perfectly fine.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because they actually concentrate on delivering stuff rather than staying up to date. And so absolutely.
So are you trying to say that R&D does not deliver stuff?
No.
Never mind.
Say that.
That's what he said.
He's being super sensitive today, Vesa.
Yes, he is. I must have insulted him or something. I don't know. So it's like
super sensitive. We love you. Yes. You do great work.
We love you, Waldek. Yes.
Thank you. I feel appreciated.
Feeling better?
I read your blog all the time. I do, actually.
Okay.
Thank you.
When I can't remember how to do something, I'm like, damn. Well, Waldek blogged about that. Where is it? Oh, there. Yeah.
Okay, we need to move on because otherwise we'll be chatting here too long. So next one. So Mikael Svensson had a great blog post related on their new sample from Puzzlepart. Puzzlepart is the company where Mikael works, and he's CTO of that company. And they are releasing a set of samples in their own GitHub. Which is absolutely fine. You don't actually have to use the BMP GitHub for that. No, just kidding. So, but this is a great sample. Yes, exactly. So this is great example on how to add a new button for all of your document libraries, which is then download as a PDF. It is using Graph APIs under the hood, and basically enabling you then to download the Word documents as a PDF. So, which is pretty cool. If you open up this one, just to pinpoint actually this location as well. So, like I said, Puzzlepart has a relatively large sample of SPFX solutions, which they use for their customers as well. So, some of them are overlapping with the let's say the SharePoint generic samples as well. But hey, that's a normal thing. Everything it's great that this stuff is available for others to take advantage as well. Cool. Then moving on things. This one was something interesting, which the person who wrote this, now I actually forgot to cut the name. Let me actually double check that one. It was Magnus. So Magnus, who actually has created this, pinged me this earlier this morning as well, asking how could he get noted on the official docs as well, related to Office UI Fabric, and I will loop in the right people. But this is around how to get started with Office UI Fabric with Aurelia. And Aurelia is a JavaScript framework. So if you don't want to use React or Vue or Angular, but you want to use Aurelia, this one will make your life easier, because then you're able to do stuff like sliders and all of that more easily and still have the same consistent look and feel as other areas of SharePoint. So cool stuff. Cool stuff and good looking stuff. So he has really spent time on trying to make sure that.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah. Yes.
Impressive.
Yes. Really impressive. Cool. And then the last thing was around something I wouldn't say classic. It's interesting to see this is the interest of this one is growing all the time. It's the SharePoint framework and Microsoft Bots. So technically Microsoft Bots are like 2.5 years old already, Microsoft Bot framework. And I still remember back in more than 2 years ago in Australia, there was a European SharePoint conference. In Keynote, we actually showed how we were talking to, I think.
Hold on, what? There was European SharePoint conference in Australia?
Austria.
In Austria, yeah. I was like,
I heard Australia too. I'm like, wait,
yeah. I was like,
okay.
Wait a minute, what?
We relocated that, yeah. So,
Australia, same, right?
almost the same thing. They're right next to each other, right? Right?
Yeah.
Vienna, Venice.
Just whatever. Yeah. I was in Venice at Australia, and we had the European.
Venice in Australia, yes.
Okay, thank you for the correction. Anyway, in the keynote we were showing, I think it was actually Microsoft Teams, unless I'm mistaken. We were using the audio to create modern SharePoint sites by using the bot framework. So we're basically chatting through the iPhone and then creating sites. And that's more than 2 years ago already. But it's more and more, actually, there's more and more clearly interest on having actual bots. And now that the Microsoft Teams usage is growing all the time, and also how would you expose the same bot in SharePoint framework or in SharePoint? So, and this one is basically walking through the relatively the most simplistic scenario, basically on creating a bot and then hosting that in the SharePoint framework web part, heading the framework bot framework settings, and then running that chat in a web part window. So relatively simple stuff, but it gives you a nice starting point to get started on the both techniques. So nice job here. So happy coding, folks. And there we go from Gaspar. Good, but that's all we had actually from the community. And there was quite a lot of conferences last week, and there was quite a lot of people traveling across the world. There was the Chicago thing, right, Julie, where you were as well. So people were not plugging that actively. And also there was the Thrive conference and a few others which were moving around all around the world as well. If we missed something super, super important, or if somebody feels that, hey, you should have actually mentioned us, please use the SB Dev Weekly hashtag, so we will actually catch you. That's also the challenge for us on realizing that there's something cool out there, because adding writing the blog post doesn't mean that everybody will just find the blog post or the YouTube video, right? So please keep on repeating and promoting and using the hashtags and all of that, so we know that something is happening. So what about this week? Any good plans? Any good ideas? Christmas is coming. Is there anything happening anymore in US? It's way after Thanksgiving already. So
yeah, no, I mean, well, the Christmas decorations around here have been up since Halloween, which is late October, which just is I can't handle it. But I did put the Charlie Brown Christmas album on Sunday and bake Christmas cookies most of the day. So yeah, we're doing the Christmas thing and a lot of coding. A lot of coding. I've got a lot of work on my plate, so very, very busy for the holiday season. Hopefully get some skiing in. That would be good.
Yeah. What about you, Waldek? Anything on your mind for the next week?
For the next week, let me see. So over the weekend, we put up the tree. That's ticked off. I mean, sure, there's a lot of work to be done at work, but that doesn't involve coding. With regards to coding, I think, nowadays,
code anymore.
Nowadays, well, at this moment, exactly no. I'm living in conference call tools like I have 5 calls during a day. Some are in Skype for Business, Zoom, WebEx, Teams, like everything that is available there. We're doing research, we're writing pitches, so it's like different things, everything but coding. With regards to coding, I think that the next one, well, it's still CLI, trying to finish the provisioning script for the starter kit. Yep. Other than that, I mean, yeah, there are actually a few things. There is a cool solution demo that we talked about. I'm not sure if I will be able to squeeze that before the end of the year, but if I do, well, then we have something more to talk about.
That is true. You mean the one which we talked about earlier today, which we can't actually say out loud yet? The thing which we're not talking about, right?
The thing with the thing. The thing with the thing.
The thing and the thing and the thing.
The thing and the thing and thing.
Yeah, I get to work on custom learning this week, though, so that's exciting. Microsoft's custom learning. That's going to be. I'm doing some. We're ramping up fast because we're hopefully targeting the end of January for release on that, and it should be really great. We're excited about it. So.
And that should be released through the provisioning service with the VMP provisioning service, so people can go to the website and then say that I want to have this one in my tenant, which means that I need to make sure that provisioning service is actually running.
We need to talk.
Yes.
So what are you going to do the next weeks? Exactly that. There you go.
Yes. Yeah. So, but to be fair,
now we know.
the code and everything else on that one is working already fine. We just need to clear some small polishing things like environmental checking. We were just talking with Irvin and Paolo related on engine improvements, because there's in the provisioning service, there might be templates which have a pre-requirements, like you need to be a taxonomy admin before the template can be applied. So you need to be able to run this kind of a check against the environment. Prerequisite checks. And then if that's okay, then we are allowing you the provision. So there's a humongous amount of kind of variables which we need to make sure that we are taking into account. And plus the legal discussions and the wordings and all of that stuff, which is the PM's nightmare. But hey, that's my job. So
that's why I don't do that job. I'm not legal.
Yeah.
Mark's legal.
Yeah.
Mark's accounting too. I'm human resources though.
So if you're not legal, are you trying to say that you are illegal?
And you said that you are human resources and you still recruited to the client. I'm not sure that.
Yeah, well, sure? I made some strict language to keep him in line, and so far so good. You know,
this is your box. You can work.
Yeah, we were chatting with Todd in the Ljubljana last week as well. So, but he seemed to be happy to be part of your gang.
Yeah,
so.
It's great. It's really great. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Excellent. But I think that sums up. We've been chatting way too long again, so it's all good. But we'll get the video out. All of the stuff which we heard in the video will be in the video notes. And thank you, Julie. Great
thank you.
To have you in a call. We need to be in touch before the learning stuff. We do. That's a
we have
discussion.
To connect. Definitely different discussion.
Yes. But thank you everybody for watching. We will come up with a new SP Dev Weekly in a week, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, that's how it works. Bye-bye. Thanks, Julie.
Bye-bye. Thank you.